I should start with the money. That's what everyone wants to know about, right? How much, how long, where it went. Like I kept a ledger with little gold stars for every time I was a good father. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I paid because they asked. I paid because it was easier than arguing. I paid because somewhere in the back of my mind, I believed that if I stopped, they'd stop calling. My daughter Emma's voice always had this quality to it when she needed something. Not desperate, exactly. More like strategically worried. She'd start with, "Dad, I hate to bother you," which was her way of saying she'd already bothered everyone else. Then came the explanation. Always reasonable, always temporary, always just this once. The first time was car repairs. $1,200 for a transmission that apparently couldn't wait until her next paycheck. I sent it through my bank's app while she was still on the phone, heard the relief in her voice, like I'd just pulled her from a burning building. She promised to pay me back within the month. That was March of 2019. The second time was her husband Brett's medical bills. Some kind of specialist visit that insurance didn't cover. $2,300. Emma sent me a picture of the invoice, all official-looking with letterhead and account numbers. I never asked why Brett didn't call himself. Maybe that should have been my first clue. My son Tyler was different. He didn't do worried voices or long explanations. He'd just lay out the problem like he was presenting a business case, which I guess made sense given his job in pharmaceutical sales. "I need $5,000 for a security deposit on the new place. The landlord wants first, last, and deposit up front. I'll have it back to you in 6 weeks. Flat. Professional. Like we were colleagues, not family. I lived in the same house I'd bought 30 years ago, back when the neighborhood was still called up and coming instead of gentrified. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with counters I installed myself. The mortgage had been paid off for a decade. I drove a 2011 Civic with 140,000 miles on it. I worked as a facilities manager for a medical complex downtown, which is a fancy way of saying I made sure the lights stayed on and the toilets flushed. It paid $68,000 a year, plus benefits. Not rich, not poor, comfortable, if you didn't have 2 adult children treating you like an ATM. The thing about being useful is that people stop seeing you as a person. You become a function, a resource. I was the guy who picked up the phone at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was the backup plan, the safety net, the last resort that somehow became the first call. Emma lived 2 hours north with Brett and their daughter Lily. Or at least that's what I thought. Tyler lived 40 minutes west with his wife Rachel. I saw them maybe 3 times a year. Birthdays, Thanksgiving, the occasional Sunday lunch where everyone checked their phones and left after an hour. In 3 years, I'd transferred just over $84,000 to my children. I knew the exact number because I finally looked at my statements one night after Tyler called asking for help with his daughter's private school tuition. The account summary went back 36 months. It read like a casualty report. March 2019, $2,200 April 2019, $2,300 June 2019, $5,000 August 2019, $3,800, and on and on and on. The amounts varied, but the pattern didn't. One of them would call. I'd ask a few basic questions that they'd answer with just enough detail to sound legitimate, and I'd send them money. They always said they'd pay me back. They never did. After a while, I stopped expecting them to. After a while longer, I stopped bringing it up. I didn't think of myself as a victim. That's important to understand. I wasn't some sad old man getting fleeced by his ungrateful kids. I made a choice every time I clicked transfer on my phone. I chose to believe them. I chose to help. I chose not to ask the harder questions, like why a pharmaceutical sales rep making 6 figures needed his father to cover his bills, or why my daughter's husband never seemed to have money despite working as some kind of consultant. I chose to be useful instead of informed. The routine became almost comforting in its predictability. Emma would call on weeknights, usually after Lily was in bed. Tyler preferred weekends, Saturday mornings before his gym session. They'd make small talk for exactly the right amount of time. Not so short that it seemed transactional, not so long that it wasted anyone's day. Then came the ask, cushioned in apologies and promises. I'd make sympathetic noises, maybe push back just enough to feel like I had a spine, then send the money. The documents started showing up about 18 months in. Nothing dramatic, just envelopes in the mail with return addresses from law firms or financial planning services. "Dad, we just need you to sign these," Emma would say. "It's for the family trust Brett and I are setting up, for Lily's future." Or Tyler, "This is just standard power of attorney stuff. Rachel and I are updating our estate planning. You're listed as an emergency contact." I'd skim the papers, see my name, see theirs, see a lot of legal language that might as well have been Sanskrit. I'd sign where they'd helpfully marked with little sticky arrows. I'd send them back. Nobody ever explained what I was actually agreeing to, and I never asked. Looking back, I can see how pathetic that was. In the moment, it just felt like being a good father. My ex-wife, Patricia, left when the kids were in college. She didn't leave for someone else or because we fought. She left because, in her words, she'd done her time. 23 years of marriage, and one day, she just announced she was moving to Arizona to live with her sister. We did the divorce through one of those online services. She took half the savings and her car. I kept the house and the pension. The kids were upset for about 3 weeks, then went back to their lives. Patricia sent birthday cards with gift certificates inside. We talked maybe twice a year, always cordial, always brief. I mention this because I want you to understand something. I was alone before any of this happened. The betrayal didn't create my isolation. It just revealed how deep it already ran. On a Tuesday in February 2022, my supervisor asked me to drive to the company's satellite clinic in Riverside to check on some HVAC issues they'd been having. It was a nothing job, maybe 4 hours round trip. I left at 1 in the afternoon, fixed the problem in 40 minutes, turned out to be a tripped breaker and a panicked receptionist, and decided to grab an early dinner before heading back. Riverside isn't a big city, but it's got that sprawling quality where everything looks like it's made of strip malls and parking lots. I picked a chain restaurant off the highway, the kind with big booths and laminated menus offering 47 varieties of burger. I was looking at the menu when I saw him. Brett, my son-in-law, walking across the parking lot toward a hotel next door. I actually smiled. What were the odds? I started to raise my hand to wave, maybe call out to him, when I noticed he wasn't alone. A woman walked next to him, laughing at something he'd said. Not Emma. Wrong height, wrong hair, wrong everything. The smile died on my face. I told myself it was innocent. Business colleague, maybe. Friend. Maybe Emma was inside the hotel waiting. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Then I saw her. Emma came out of the hotel lobby, moving fast, her purse swinging from her shoulder. She wore sunglasses even though it was overcast. She walked right up to Brett and the other woman, said something that made the woman laugh and hug her. They all stood there talking like old friends, like people comfortable with each other, like people who did this all the time. I sat in my car across the parking lot and watched my daughter in a city she was never supposed to be in front of a hotel she had no reason to visit, acting like someone I didn't recognize. She'd told me she couldn't visit last month because Lily had the flu. She'd called me from what she said was home, and I'd heard a child coughing in the background. I'd sent her $800 to help with the medical bills. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't call her name. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel and watched until all 3 of them went back inside the hotel. Then I sat there longer, waiting to see if I'd misunderstood, if there was some explanation that would make this make sense. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Hey, Dad, can you call me when you get a chance? Need to talk about something." I turned off my phone. I started the car. I drove home doing exactly the speed limit, my mind completely empty except for one thought that repeated itself like a drumbeat. She wasn't surprised I saw her. She was surprised I was alone. While you're here, hit the hype button. Don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, that came later. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan going around and around, trying to fit what I'd seen into the story I'd been telling myself for 3 years. Maybe Emma had a legitimate reason to be in Riverside. Maybe she'd told me about it and I'd forgotten. Maybe the hotel was hosting some kind of event. Maybe Brett's mystery companion was a cousin or a colleague or someone completely innocent. Maybe. The thing about lying to yourself is that it gets harder the longer you do it. Every maybe had to fight through the memory of her face when she came out of that hotel. Not guilty, not worried, relaxed, happy. Like someone who knew exactly where she was and why. Around 4 a.m, I got up and made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and pulled up my bank statements again. I started making a list, not of the amounts. I already knew those. I made a list of the reasons. March 2019, car repairs, Emma. April 2019, medical bills, Emma. June 2019, security deposit, Tyler. August 2019, emergency dental work, Emma. 14 entries later, I noticed something. Emma's requests always came with specific details, invoice numbers, account balances, pictures of official documents. Tyler's were vaguer, more conceptual. Need help with cash flow. Temporary shortage until the bonus hits. Different styles, but both just detailed enough to sound legitimate without being verifiable. I opened a browser and searched for the name of the medical practice Emma had sent me that invoice for back in April 2019. The practice existed. That was something. I clicked through to their billing section and found a phone number. I wrote it down on the pad next to my laptop, right under the question I'd written and underlined 3 times. What am I paying for? At 7 a.m. I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. My supervisor sounded genuinely concerned, told me to take care of myself, said he'd handle the scheduling. I promised I'd be back Thursday at the latest. I made more coffee. I stared at the phone number. I picked up my cell and dialed. A pleasant voice answered on the second ring. Riverside Medical Associates, how may I help you? Hi. Yes. I'm calling about a billing question. My daughter Emma Schaefer was treated there in April of 2019, and I'm trying to verify some payment information. A pause. Keyboard clicks. Can you spell that last name for me? I did. More clicks. Longer pause. Sir, I'm not showing any patient by that name in our system. Is it possible she was seen at one of our other locations? You have other locations? No, sir. We're a single practice clinic. Are you sure she was seen here? I thanked her and hung up. I sat there looking at the invoice Emma had texted me 3 years ago, still saved in my phone. Official letterhead, account number, balance due. Every detail correct, except the one that mattered. It was fake. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought they would, but they were steady as I opened a new document on my laptop and typed, Emma, April 2019, fake medical bill, $2,300. Then I started going through every other request, every other emergency, every other crisis that had required my immediate financial intervention. The transmission repair place didn't have any service records for Emma's car. The landlord Tyler claimed needed $5,000 for a security deposit. Didn't exist at that address. The private school charging $8,000 in tuition had no student by my granddaughter's name enrolled. I worked through the list methodically, like I was checking circuit breakers or testing water pressure. This is broken. That's disconnected. This never existed in the first place. By noon, I'd verified that at least 11 of the 14 major requests had been partial or complete fabrications. The other 3 I couldn't verify either way. They involved cash businesses or situations too vague to track down. $84,000, 3 years, 11 lies. I sat back in my chair and laughed. It came out like a cough at first, then built into something that made my ribs hurt. I laughed because the alternative was throwing my laptop through the window, and I'd need that laptop. My phone buzzed. Emma calling. I stared at her name on the screen. Emma, daughter, because apparently I needed the reminder of who she was supposed to be, and let it go to voicemail. 20 seconds later, a text. Dad, call me when you can. Want to check in. I set the phone face down on the table. I made lunch. I ate it standing up at the counter, still thinking. Not about what they'd done. That was obvious now. About what I hadn't seen. About what kind of father pays $84,000 over 3 years and never wonders why the emergencies never stop. A useful father. That's what kind. Around 2 p.m., I drove to a storage facility on the east side of town. I'd rented a unit there 6 years ago when Patricia left, mostly for furniture and boxes we didn't need anymore. 10 by 10 feet, climate-controlled, $65 a month. I hadn't been back there in at least 2 years. The lock was stuck. I had to work the key for a full minute before it finally turned. The door rattled up and I stepped into a space that smelled like cardboard and old air. Boxes lined the walls. Patricia's label maker had marked each one in neat capital letters. Kitchen, linens, Tyler, childhood, Emma, school years. I found what I was looking for in a box marked tax documents. Not the recent ones. Those were at home in my filing cabinet. These went back further. I pulled out folders and spread them on the concrete floor, working backward through time. 2018, 2017, 2016. In 2016, I'd helped Tyler with a down payment on his first condo. $15,000 withdrawn from my savings account in June. He'd promised to pay me back within a year. I found the promissory note he'd signed, typed up all official-looking with our names and the amount and his signature at the bottom. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of it. Then I found the bank statement showing the withdrawal. Another picture. In 2017, Emma had needed help with unexpected tax debt. $7,800 sent via wire transfer in April. She'd cried on the phone, said she was terrified of the IRS, said she didn't know what she'd do without me. I found the wire transfer receipt. Picture. In 2018, Tyler again. Dad, I made a bad investment. I need to cover the loss before Rachel finds out. $11,000. Transferred on a Sunday morning while I was supposed to be at a barbecue. Picture, picture, picture. The pattern went back further than 3 years. It went back to when they were still in their 20s, still figuring out their lives, except they'd never been figuring anything out. They'd been figuring me out. I loaded the boxes back into my car, all of them. Every document, every receipt, every record of every time I'd chosen to be useful instead of suspicious. The storage unit stood empty except for some old furniture I didn't remember buying. I closed the door and didn't bother locking it. At home, I cleared off my dining room table, a piece of furniture I used maybe twice a year, and laid everything out. Documents on the left, bank statements in the middle, a timeline on the right, constructed from receipts and transfer records and calendar dates I remembered because they'd interrupted actual events. Tyler's wedding, Emma's birthday, Christmas. The calls always came when I was busy. That wasn't coincidence. I worked until the light outside turned gray, then blue, then black. I ordered pizza from a place that delivered and ate it cold from the box while I cross-referenced dates and amounts. My phone buzzed 7 more times. Emma twice, Tyler 3 times, 2 texts from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them. Around midnight, I found the power of attorney documents Emma had asked me to sign 18 months ago. I'd kept the copies she'd sent back to me, filed them away in a folder labeled Legal, Family. I read them carefully this time, actually processing the words instead of just skimming for the signature line. They weren't for a family trust. They gave Emma and Brett broad authority over my financial accounts in the event of incapacity or cognitive decline. There was a whole section about protecting family assets, and ensuring proper management during periods of diminished capacity. I was 59 years old. I ran 5 miles 3 times a week. There was nothing diminished about my capacity, except my capacity to see my own children clearly. I read the document again, then a third time. The law firm that prepared it was real. I checked. The notary signature was legitimate. Everything was legal. Everything was binding. Everything gave my children the ability to make financial decisions on my behalf if they could convince anyone I wasn't capable of making them myself. They'd been setting this up for a year and a half. They'd been planning for the day when I either died or became inconvenient to deal with. They'd been preparing for my disappearance while I paid their bills and signed their papers and asked no questions. I sat at that table until dawn broke outside my windows. Then I took out my phone and opened the text thread with Emma. Me. We need to talk, all of us, this weekend. The response came within 30 seconds. Emma. Everything okay? Me. Saturday, 2 p.m., my place. Emma. Dad, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Me. Saturday. I sent the same message to Tyler. Then I turned off my phone, went upstairs, and slept for 4 hours without dreaming. When I woke up, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Friday morning, the glass repair guys showed up at 8 a.m., 2 men in company shirts who replaced my window in 45 minutes and charged me $320. I paid cash and tipped them each $20. They asked what happened. I said I didn't know. They didn't push it. After they left, I installed a camera. Nothing fancy, just a cheap wireless model from the hardware store that connected to my phone. Mounted it over the front door, angled to cover the porch and driveway. If someone came back, I'd have footage. I was testing the camera's motion detection when Dennis called. Got something else for you, he said. You still want to know what your kids are into? Yeah. Meet me at Bailey's, 1 hour. Bailey's was a dive bar 3 blocks from my house. The kind of place where the regulars have assigned stools and the bartender knows your drink before you sit down. I'd been there maybe twice in 30 years. Dennis treated it like a second home. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a beer and a manila folder. I slid in across from him. You look like hell, he said. I feel like hell. What do you have? He opened the folder and pushed it across the table. Inside were printouts, articles from business journals, screenshots from websites, incorporation documents for several companies. Your son-in-law, Brett? He's been running the same scam for 8 years. Changes the name, changes the pitch, but it's always the same con. He targets middle-class professionals, teachers, nurses, small business owners, and promises them investment returns through consulting opportunities. They put in 5, 10, 20,000. He shows them fake returns for the first few months, builds their confidence, gets them to recruit their friends. Classic pyramid structure. How many people has he scammed? Hard to say. The 2020 investigation identified 43 victims, total losses around 600,000. But that's just what they could prove. Real numbers probably double that. I flipped through the printouts. Names I didn't recognize, stories of people who'd lost their savings, their retirement funds, their kids' college money. What about Tyler? Tyler's smarter. He stays in the background, handles the money movement, sets up the shell companies, manages the paperwork. Brett's the face, Tyler's the infrastructure. They're a team. And they've never been charged? Brett's been charged twice. Both cases fell apart. First time, the victims refused to testify, too embarrassed. Second time, they couldn't find the money. It disappeared into offshore accounts, trusts, real estate holdings under different names. By the time the DA built a case, the trail was cold. I sat back and finished reading. One article mentioned that Brett had filed for bankruptcy in 2019, claiming debts of over $2 million while somehow maintaining a lifestyle that suggested otherwise. The bankruptcy was discharged. He'd walked away clean. Dennis, how do people like this keep operating? Because the system's built for reasonable people. It assumes everyone's playing by the same rules. But guys like Brett and Tyler, they know the rules better than anyone. They know exactly how far they can push before something breaks. And they know that most people won't fight back. Too embarrassing. Too expensive. Too hard to prove. I'm not most people. No, you're not. But Eddie, I gotta tell you, these guys are dangerous. Not in the punch you in the face way. In the legal manipulation, burn your life down way. You go after them, they'll come at you with everything they have. They already are. Someone threw a brick through my window Wednesday night. Dennis's jaw tightened. You report it? Yeah. Cops said there's nothing they can do without proof. You have cameras? I do now. He nodded slowly. Then he closed the folder and pushed it all the way across the table. This is yours. Copies of everything I found. Use it however you want. But Eddie, be smart. These people have already taken your money. Don't let them take anything else. We finished our beers. I took the folder and left. Back home, I spread everything out on my dining room table next to my own documentation. The picture was getting clearer. Brett and Tyler weren't just running one scam. They were running multiple schemes simultaneously, using my money to seed new cons while paying off old ones. I was part of a rotation, a reliable income source that kept their operation afloat. That's why they'd panicked when I cut them off. I wasn't just their father. I was infrastructure. Saturday morning, Arthur called with news. We're ready to file. Got all the paperwork prepared. You sure you want to do this? I'm sure. It's going to cost you. Filing fees, court costs, my time. Even if you win, you might not get everything back. I don't care about the money anymore. Then what do you care about? Good question. I thought about it while Arthur waited on the line. I care about them knowing they can't do this to people. That eventually someone fights back. All right then. I'll file Monday morning. After that, this becomes public record. Your kids, everyone who knows you, they'll all see what you're accusing them of. Last chance to back out. File it. We hung up. I sat there feeling something shift inside my chest. Not relief, not satisfaction, just inevitability, like watching a boulder roll downhill. Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Patricia. She answered on the fourth ring. Eddie, is that you? Yeah. How are you? I'm fine. Surprised to hear from you. Everything okay? Not really. Can we talk? I told her everything. The money, the lies, the investigation, the brick through my window. She listened without interrupting, which had always been one of her strengths. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm not surprised. You're not. Eddie, I tried to tell you years ago. After I left, I called you once, remember? Asked how you were doing with the kids. You said they were fine, that you were helping them through some rough patches. I did remember. She'd called in 2018, maybe 6 months after she left. We'd talked for 10 minutes about nothing important. What did you want to tell me? That they were using you. That they'd always been using you. Since high school, probably earlier. They learned that if they came to you with a problem, you'd fix it. And once you fix something enough times, you stop being their parent. You become their maintenance crew. The words hit harder than I expected. Why didn't you say something? I tried. You didn't want to hear it. You've never wanted to hear anything negative about Tyler or Emma. You built your whole identity around being the reliable father, the one who doesn't let his kids down. I couldn't compete with that. Is that why you left? Partly. But mostly I left because I was tired. Tired of watching you sacrifice everything for children who'd learned to take it for granted. Tired of being married to someone who'd choose them over me every single time. I'm not saying I was perfect, Eddie, but I couldn't watch you do that to yourself anymore. We talked for another hour. She told me about her life in Arizona, her job at a dental office, her sister's health problems. I told her about work, about my house, about the new camera over my front door. We didn't talk more about the kids. Before we hung up, she said, Eddie, Whatever you do next, make sure you're doing it for you. Not to teach them a lesson, not to get revenge. Do it because you need to, because you can't move forward without it. I think I passed that point a week ago. Then good luck. And Eddie, I'm sorry for leaving the way I did, for not fighting harder to make you see what was happening. It's okay. You did what you had to do. So do you. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, thinking about Patricia's words, about doing it for me. The problem was, I didn't know what I needed anymore. I'd spent so long being useful, being reliable, being the father who always picked up the phone, that I'd forgotten how to be anything else. Maybe this lawsuit would help me figure it out, or maybe it would just burn everything down and leave me standing in the ashes. Either way, it was too late to stop now. Monday morning, Arthur filed the lawsuit. Tyler Rourke and Emma Schaefer, defendants. Edward Rourke, plaintiff. Cause of action: fraud, breach of contract, unjust enrichment. Damages sought: $127,000 plus interest, legal fees, and court costs. He called me at noon to confirm it was done. You're officially at war, Eddie. How does it feel? Like I just jumped off a cliff. Well, you've got about 30 days before you hit the ground. That's how long they have to respond. Use that time to prepare. They're going to come at you hard. I know. I'm serious. They're going to claim you're senile, that you gave them the money willingly, that you're a vindictive old man trying to hurt them. They'll drag up every mistake you ever made as a father, every argument, every time you forgot a birthday, every harsh word. They'll paint you as the villain. Let them try. Eddie, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've seen families destroy each other in court. It's ugly, it's permanent, and nobody wins. You sure this is what you want? I thought about Emma on my porch at 2 a.m., the mask dropping. I thought about Tyler's voice going cold when I refused to back down. I thought about 43 victims losing $600,000 to my son-in-law's schemes. I'm sure. All right, then buckle up. The response to my lawsuit came on a Thursday, hand-delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I signed for it and carried the envelope inside, waiting until I was sitting at my kitchen table before opening it. 23 pages. That's how long their denial was. 23 pages of legal language, accusations, and a counter-narrative that painted me as the villain and my children as concerned family members trying to help their declining father. I read it twice, made notes, then called Arthur. You read it? He asked. Every word. It's garbage. You know that, right? This is standard defense strategy. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. They're claiming I begged them to take my money, that I insisted on giving them gifts because I felt guilty about being an absent father. Like I said, garbage. They have signed statements from 3 people saying I seemed confused when they saw me last year. Who? Brett's parents and some neighbor I've never met. Arthur sighed. Hearsay. We'll challenge it. But Eddie, this is what I was warning you about. They're building a case that you're not reliable, that your memory is failing, that you're making accusations based on confusion rather than fact. I have documentation. I know, and will present it. But you need to understand something. In civil court, the standard is preponderance of evidence. That means whoever tells the most believable story wins. It's not about truth. It's about persuasion. So what do? We prepare. Discovery starts in 2 weeks. That means we get to demand documents from them, and they get to demand documents from us. Bank records, emails, texts, anything relevant to the case. Use that time to organize everything you have. And Eddie, don't talk to anyone about this case except me. Not friends, not co-workers, nobody. Everything you say can be used against you. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the day organizing. Created digital copies of every document, backed them up to a cloud drive and an external hard drive. Sorted everything chronologically. Built a timeline that showed not just when I'd sent money, but what lies they'd told me to get it. Around 6 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I checked the camera before answering. Emma. Alone this time, no Brett, no Tyler. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "Dad," she said. "Please, can we talk? Just you and me?" "About what?" "About fixing this, about making this right." "It's too late for that." "It's not. Dad, I know things got out of hand. I know we made mistakes, but this lawsuit, these accusations, they're tearing our family apart. The family was torn apart the moment you decided to steal from me. We didn't steal, we borrowed, and we were going to pay you back." "With what money?" She hesitated. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of truth against strategy. "We have money coming, a settlement from an investment that went bad. It'll be here in 3 months, maybe 4. We can pay you back then. All of it, plus interest. Just drop the lawsuit and give us time." "You're lying." "I'm not. You're standing on my porch lying to my face the same way you've been lying for 6 years. The only difference now is I can see it." "Dad, go home, Emma. What happened to you? You used to be kind. You used to care about us." "I cared about the people I thought you were. Turns out those people don't exist." She started crying. Real tears, maybe. Or maybe just the performance she'd perfected over decades of getting what she wanted. "You're going to regret this. When you're old and alone and you need someone to take care of you, you're going to remember this moment." "I'll take my chances." She turned and walked to her car. I watched her drive away, then closed the door and locked it. My phone rang. Tyler. "She tried her best," he said without preamble. "I told her it wouldn't work, but she wanted to give you one more chance." "One more chance to what? Let you keep stealing from me?" "We're not stealing. We're your children. Everything we did for the family." "For your family, not mine." "You're going to lose in court. You know that, right? We have lawyers, documentation, witnesses. We have everything we need to prove you gave us that money willingly, that you're just confused about the circumstances. Then I'll see you in court. You'll also see every mistake you've made as a father, every time you forgot my birthday, every parent-teacher conference you missed, every promise you broke. We're going to put it all on record, Dad. Every failure, every moment you weren't there. Is that really what you want? I want my money back, and I want you to face consequences for what you've done. Then you're going to be disappointed." He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, thinking about birthdays and parent-teacher conferences, about the times I'd worked late and missed Tyler's basketball games, about the year I forgot Emma's graduation because I was dealing with a flooding crisis at work. They were going to use my failures as a father to justify their theft. They were going to claim I owed them, that the money was compensation for my absence, that they'd earned it through years of having an imperfect parent. It was brilliant and disgusting at the same time. Friday, I went to work and did my job, focused on tasks, on problems I could fix with tools and knowledge. At lunch, I sat in my truck and reviewed my notes. Tonight, I'd start preparing my deposition testimony. Arthur said that's where cases were won or lost, in those hours of questioning where lawyers tried to trap you in contradictions. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Heard about the lawsuit. You doing okay?" I must have looked at that message for 5 minutes before responding. "Getting through it." Her reply came immediately. "If you need someone to talk to, call me. I mean it." I thanked her and put the phone away, finished my lunch and went back to work. At 5 p.m., my supervisor called me into his office. "Eddie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." "All right. Are you in some kind of legal trouble?" My stomach dropped. "Why do you ask?" "Because 2 people called here this week asking about you, about your work performance, whether you've seemed confused or forgetful, whether we've noticed any changes in your behavior." "Who called?" "They said they were from a law firm. Said they were conducting background research for a family legal matter. I didn't give them any information. told them to submit a formal request through HR. But Eddie, what's going on? I explained it in broad strokes. The lawsuit, my children's counterclaims, their attempt to paint me as incompetent. My supervisor leaned back in his chair and whistled. Jesus, Eddie, that's rough. I'm sorry, it's affecting my work. It's not. That's the thing. Your work has been fine. A few mistakes here and there, but nothing that concerns me. Certainly nothing that suggests cognitive decline. He paused. You want me to put that in writing? You'd do that? You've worked here for 18 years. You're one of the most reliable people I have. If someone's trying to make you look incompetent, I'll happily tell them they're wrong. I left his office with a letter from my supervisor stating that I'd been an exemplary employee for nearly 2 decades, that my recent performance had been consistent with my usual high standards, and that he'd observed no signs of cognitive decline or confusion. More ammunition for the case, more truth to fight their lies. That weekend, I stayed home and prepared. Went through every document again, flagging the most important ones. Wrote out my version of events, focusing on facts rather than emotions. Times, dates, amounts, conversations. What they'd said, what I'd said, what actually happened versus what they claimed. Saturday afternoon, Dennis stopped by unannounced. Heard you're going to war, he said when I opened the door. News travels fast. Small town. You want company? We sat on my porch drinking beer and not talking about the lawsuit. He told me about his grandson's little league games. I told him about a raccoon that had gotten into the medical complex's dumpster and terrorized the night cleaning crew. Normal conversation. Human connection. Before he left, he gripped my shoulder. You're doing the right thing. Most people wouldn't fight back. They'd just take the loss and move on. But you're fighting, and that matters. Even if I lose? Even if you lose, because at least they'll know they couldn't break you. Sunday, I went to church. First time in 5 years. I'm not particularly religious, but I needed to be around people who weren't involved in my problems, people who smiled and said good morning without hidden agendas. The sermon was about forgiveness, about letting go of grudges and embracing mercy. The pastor told a story about a man who'd been wronged by his brother and spent years seeking revenge, only to realize he'd poisoned himself more than his enemy. I listened and didn't change my mind. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. Some people don't get to be forgiven just because it would be easier for everyone else. Monday morning, Arthur called with an update. They've requested your medical records going back 10 years, your employment files, your financial statements. They're going scorched earth on discovery. Let them look. They won't find anything. They're also deposing you in 2 weeks. 3 hours on the record, everything recorded. You need to prepare. I'm ready. No, you're not. Nobody's ever ready for a deposition. We need to practice. Come to my office Wednesday evening. We'll do a mock deposition. I'll ask you every dirty question they're going to ask, and you'll learn not to flinch. Wednesday evening, I sat across from Arthur in his office while he pretended to be opposing counsel. Mr. Rourke, how many times in the last 5 years have you forgotten to pay a bill on time? I don't know. A few times, probably. A few? That's vague. Would you say it's happened monthly? Weekly? Maybe 3 or 4 times total. And why did you forget? I was busy. I work full time. Sometimes things slip through the cracks. Arthur held up a hand. Stop. You're being defensive. When they ask why you forgot something, the answer is, I forgot. Period. Don't explain. Don't justify. Give them the minimum information necessary. We practiced for 2 hours. He asked me about my divorce, my relationship with my children, every mistake I'd made at work or at home. He twisted my words, mischaracterized my answers, tried to make me angry. By the end, I was exhausted, but I was ready. One more thing, Arthur said as I was leaving. When they ask you why you're doing this, what will you say? To get my money back. Wrong. If it's just about money, They'll offer a settlement, and you'll look unreasonable for refusing. When they ask why you're doing this, you say, because my children lied to me, stole from me, and attempted to have me declared incompetent so they could control my assets. This isn't about money, this is about accountability. I practiced it on the drive home, made it part of my vocabulary. Not revenge, accountability. The deposition was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I wore a suit I'd bought for Patricia's aunt's funeral, ate a light breakfast, and drove to the law office where opposing counsel worked. The conference room was designed to intimidate. Mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Emma and Tyler's lawyer, Jennifer Hastings, sat at one end. A court reporter sat at the other with her stenography machine. Arthur sat next to me. Jennifer was in her 40s, blonde, with a smile that never reached her eyes. She introduced herself again, explained the ground rules, then started asking questions. For the first hour, they were softball, establishing facts, my name, my age, my employment history, where I lived, how long I'd lived there, basic stuff. Then it shifted. Mr. Rourke, you claim you gave your children over $100,000 based on false pretenses. Is that correct? That's correct. But you don't have any written agreements specifying these were loans, do you? Most of them, no. So your children could reasonably believe these were gifts? No. They asked for loans. They promised to pay me back. But you have no documentation of those promises. I have text messages, voicemails, verbal agreements. Verbal agreements from conversations you can't prove happened, Arthur interjected. Are you asking a question or making an argument? Jennifer smiled. I'll rephrase. Mr. Rourke, is it possible you've misremembered some of these conversations? No. You're certain? I'm certain. You've never forgotten anything important? I've forgotten things, everyone does, but I haven't forgotten my children lying to me for 6 years. She moved on to my medical history, asked about the time I'd had a minor accident at work and suffered a concussion, asked about the sleeping pills my doctor prescribed after Patricia left, asked about the time I'd shown up to the wrong building for a meeting and realized my mistake 20 minutes late. Every minor mistake, every human moment, being documented and pathologized. After 3 hours, Jennifer closed her notebook. Thank you, Mr. Rourke. I think that's all I need. Arthur and I left. In his car, he turned to me. You did well. Stayed calm, didn't get defensive. They've got nothing. Didn't feel like nothing. That's the point. They want you to feel rattled, but you held up. Now we depose them. Get them on record lying, contradicting themselves. That's when we win this. I hoped he was right.